Well, hello, classic rock fans. We are reporting a day after seeing Bob Dylan's second concert in Milwaukee. He did a two-night stand at the Riverside Theater this week, and I am joined by my Dylan Through the Decades co-host, Chris Beretta, and we went to go see Bob last night. Again, that was the second show. We had previously seen Bob together in 2009 and also at the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour kickoff show, which was also in Milwaukee at the Riverside Theater back in late 2021. So the second time in about 3 years that we saw him, I really enjoyed the show. I'm glad he came to Milwaukee and did two nights. That was much easier on me for getting tickets. Two nights is always makes it more easy. So this is your fourth time seeing Bob. What is your initial reaction to last night's concert?
This is the best show I've seen.
Wow. Okay. You sure that's not just recency bias, or you're
No,
high?
no, everything about it was the best I've seen. Yeah, there are definitely issues with I feel like he changes up arrangements constantly, and at the beginning I felt like there were some issues with when you change up arrangements the way he does, you need to make sure you're enunciating. And I feel like the first two or three songs, he was having issues with maybe not issues, stylistic choices, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was hard to figure out. I'm like, what is he singing right now? But as it went on, it was easily the best in terms of even presentation wise. It was so clean the way that they had all the amps and everything just set up in the back. They had their luggage and stuff set up in the back, and everything was
Yeah.
backlit. It was a cool. Everything was. He was right in front. He had a grand piano. He was front and center. It was. I thought it was great. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Let's talk about that presentation for just a moment here, because that is the best presentation stage setup that I've seen from Bob in the times that I've seen him with you. And I guess it's probably because he, at some point during this tour, has gone the route of so many stand-up comedians and other live touring acts that are very protective of their live shows, and did the whole Yonder phone pouch thing, and also had some very strict security that did not allow people who were leaving their seats to run to the bathroom or get a drink to come back to their seats until the end of whatever song they were trying to get back in during. Very strict, trying to keep the show from any interruptions and also to prevent anyone from taking photos or videos. Bob bootleggers are some of the best in the world, so I'm sure somebody got a recording of something from that show, but we sure didn't. Our phones were in the pouches the whole time. And I think that probably gives him a little bit more confidence or comfort being in the center of the stage. They were set up still on the back half of the full stage. I remember that from the last time we had seen him, where again, there was a lot of open space in the front of the stage and the band was in the back half. At that show, Bob was off in the shadows by his piano to the side of the stage. This time his piano is in the center, and even though he's wearing a hat, that's covering most of his eyes and face, you can at least see the guy. You can at least confirm that he's there on stage. And I think that adds to the show. Also, a little more near the end of the show, he got away from the piano a little bit, came out, waved to the crowd. That was a nice touch. We hadn't seen that before. Do you think I got the sense that he's a little more confident now, or he's got his feet back under him, at least compared to when we saw him in 2021. Is that what you were thinking too?
Yeah, it felt like that. And also, it makes sense, I suppose. You take some time off and you start to get in your own head. So when you come back, you do a full 2 years at this point
Yeah.
of touring. Yeah, you kind of start feeling yourself a little bit more again.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the music that he played. When you think of the set list, what are some of the standout tracks?
I love that he's starting with "Watching the River Flow," which is such a underappreciated song because it's a single. It's not on any of his studio albums. It's off of the his greatest hits. I think the first volume, right? I believe.
How long did it
And
take
then
you to realize that that was the song that he was singing, given that was the first?
it took a minute. It took a minute. It definitely took a minute. Yeah. I remember you leaning over and you're like when he did When I Paint My Masterpiece, you're like, what song is this? I'm like, it's When I Paint My Masterpiece, Joe.
Yeah.
Which is a
Well, it
great
was.
song, and I was really happy he played it. I mean, it was great that he played it. I'm so happy
I am
yeah, anyway.
too, because that song, that's an older song. That's a song from the 70s.
Yeah.
Whereas when we saw him in 2021, he was doing almost entirely songs off the Rough and Rowdy Ways album. So I went into this show thinking that we were
Yeah.
only going to hear like newer music and maybe a selected few from, and we'll get to it, but his Christian era that we know he keeps in the set list. So anything from the 60s or 70s that he played, that always comes as a surprise to me.
Yeah. That's good. That was a good one. And then I'll Be Your Baby Tonight. I mean, like the fact that he worked in some really cool stuff from his like previous catalog is like I like that. I like that he did that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the highlights. That was one of the songs I enjoyed seeing the most. I like the song I Contain Multitudes. So that was like the first song of the night that I actually recognized. That was nice to hear. My favorite song of this show and the last time we saw him was, of course, Gotta Serve Somebody. I don't know
Oh
if
yeah.
there was a rearrangement of that, but it seemed a little less like rock and roll than when we saw him in 2021, but not in a bad way. Like it still was more of a punch than most of the other tracks that he
Oh
played.
yeah.
But that was still the highlight for me. And I know the highlight for you was the finale because he changed that up from what he had done in 2021.
You talking about Every Grain of Sand?
Yes.
Yeah, that hit. My yeah, we played at my dad's funeral, which just happened a couple of weeks ago. So that was definitely a
Very emotional
little bit of
moment.
a gut punch, little bit of a gut punch, but yeah, it was nice to hear him play it, and yeah.
Well, I remember when we saw him in 2021, I forget what he closed on, but it was an okay song to pick. It wasn't particularly memorable. And I remember seeing set lists just a couple of months after that show, seeing that he had slotted in Every Grain of Sand to be the finale. And I remember thinking, oh man, you got robbed in that first show because first night of the tour, they hadn't, totally set what the set list was going to be. They were still, figuring it out. And I just felt like I got to hear the song that I wanted to hear from his Christian era, but that one missed for you. So I'm glad now we finally got to experience that in
I'm
concert.
I'm
He
happy
played it
too
really
because it was
well.
like that's in my top five songs probably by him,
Yeah,
and so finally being able to see him play it live was great. It was great. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm looking at Setlist FM for the show that we saw. Uh, is it? Did he cover "Truckin'" by the Grateful Dead?
So okay, that's an example of where I'm talking about where like his arrangement was so different, but his enunciation, like yeah, he did trucking. I
Yeah,
I would not. I'm trying to remember like him playing trucking.
I do remember it. I remember what song that was because we were both trying to figure out what it was because I couldn't quite make it out. But the crowd responded really well, so much so that my initial thought was, "Oh, we must be getting, to near the end of the show." And I was, yeah, I was having a hard time with the lyrics, but the crowd was really into it. And I guess that speaks to, the Bob faithful, that they pick up on this stuff a lot quicker than more casual fans like myself. But that was probably the biggest audience reaction of the whole night, except for maybe the very end. I remember when you took your break to run and get another drink, which I should mention was Heaven's Door whiskey. Very cool that the Riverside had that for us, that we were able to get Heaven's Door drinks while we were watching the show. But when you ran to get a drink, you unintentionally, maybe subconsciously, intentionally chose to go during Key West Philosopher Pirate. Are you still not crazy about that song?
I don't understand the love for that song. It's such a throwaway song on an otherwise great album.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people love that song so much. It's about Jimmy Buffett. We know it's about Jimmy Buffett. It's gotta be about Buffett, right? Like there's no one else who that could be. Come on.
It at least has the Jimmy Buffett pastiche. Like I was telling you last night, the lyric, um, if you lost your mind, you might find it there. That is totally a Jimmy Buffett type of thing, And we know he
Yeah.
loves Jimmy.
Yes.
So I like it in that sense, but because it again reminds me so much more of Jimmy Buffett than Bob, I don't actually think it was one of the stronger songs of the set.
Right.
But speaking of that Bob Dylan and Jimmy Buffett connection, while I got you here, I'm just going to ask you about this because I listened to it for the first time today. Have you heard Jimmy Buffett and Emmylou Harris's cover of Mozambique?
I have.
What is your initial reaction to that?
Nice.
Yeah,
And I should say that's one of my favorite albums also is Desire.
yeah.
So I do love Desire.
Well, hey, man, I think there's a pretty good chance that this was going to be the last time that Bob plays our neck of the woods. If this is the last time Bob is in town, how do you feel about that?
I'm good with it. This is a good send off. He's still going strong. But I think he even understands. I think that we're coming to the end of it. I think he gets it. He seems to understand just in the marketing, the way he's kind of, selling everything. It reminded me, honestly, the way even the setup and everything reminded me more of the way I remember saw BB King about 20 years ago at this point over at Summerfest. It reminded me of that setup, which was a different sort of setup than you see with a lot of classic rock acts. I feel like he maybe is coming to terms with that. I don't know. Or maybe he's not.
No, I think you're onto something because there are absolutely quite a bit of rumors about how he's quietly prepping to wrap it up after this tour, if only because of the name of the tour and the fact that there are some dates attached to the tour itself. It's the Rough and Rowdy Ways Tour 2021 to 2024. If Bob was ever going to tip his hand about a farewell tour, I think it would be like this. I think he would just call it the name of the album and then put, some years on either end to indicate the time frame. I think there's a pretty good chance he wraps it up after this, but I guess that's one of the appealing things about Bob. You never really know until it happens.
Yeah. And maybe he pops up after that, Who knows?
Well, in any case, I suspect it might be the last time. And if that is the case, I want to echo the sentiment of someone in the crowd. During the show, when he played the song, I've made my mind up to give myself to you. As the song is closing and he sings the final lyric, someone from the crowd just shouted out very loudly, "Thanks, Bob," in like an earnest, but at the same time, like kind of drunken and silly kind of way. Now, normally I hate heckling of any kind. I hate when people shout out song requests. I hate that shit. But that one made me laugh really hard. And on that same sentiment, 3 fun shows for me, 4 for you. I guess that's the way we could close it out. Thanks, Bob. You know, there's just so much music, so many, good experiences that you can't say it all at once. So all we can say is thanks.
No, I totally agree.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for joining me on this review. I'm already looking forward to doing some Jimmy Buffett podcasting, and maybe we can team up for an interview before the year runs out too.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. I will see you later. Otherwise, for everybody watching, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Find our links in the description below. If you are a fan of classic rock, I guarantee that I've reviewed a different concert by an artist you're a fan of. So please check out all the cool stuff we have on this channel. But with that, for me and Chris, thanks for watching, and keep rocking.